those joining us live and those that will be joining us on the archive, we're joined by the one and the only, the returning Glen Jennings, manager of TIm Tszyu. How's it going, Glen?
Top of the world, mate. I'm at SeaWorld on the Gold Coast with my family having a little break, so life is good.
And you deserve a break, that's for sure. You're a busy man, and we definitely appreciate you giving us your time once again. Look, I want to start with some things here. So I've had you on before, and I've asked you, are you planning to sign other fighters? And you said, no, I don't know, like 3 is too much. But I see you getting a little busy there. Like I see you signing new talents. What made you change your mind? Did you just get like an itch back? What's going on?
Look, a couple of changes in my life overall. I've spent 40 years with my own entertainment security company, which is one of the biggest ones here in Australia, and I've just sold that, mate. So I turned 60 this year, so that was always my game. Once I got to 60, I was going to loosen things up, and the fight game is something that I've been passionate about for most of my life. And some of the fighters that I've taken on are very, very close to me personally and friends, and they just needed a little bit of help, and I'm happy to do that.
Okay. Can you talk to us about some of the fighters you've signed and what's going on with them at the moment?
Yeah, so, well, obviously there's TIm and Nikita Tszyu, and they're going along beautifully. Liam Wilson, you guys know Liam. He just recently fought Emmanuel Navarrete and had him in a lot of trouble. And so Liam's on deck. There's another young fella, 21-year-old Vegas Larfield, who's out of Liam Wilson's gym, and he's a terrific young fighter. He's 9-1, fights in the 55 kilo weight class. I've got 2 girls. I've still got Shannon O'Connell, and Shannon is a bit of news for you guys. Is making a return in early 2024 after her shoulder replacement. So that's exciting for her. And a young Newcastle girl in my hometown, Amber Amelia, who's another 55 kilo fighter, or 53 and a half. And she's a terrific young prospect and just a wonderful kid. So right now there's 6 fighters, and they're all very, very good people. They all tick the boxes for what I expect, and I do have high expectations, and they know that. And they're excited to have me on board to steer them through the boxing maze.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about Shannon O'Connell. I've been seeing posts on social media, and I'm thinking, am I reading that right? Like, so she is going to be making a return in early next year.
Yeah, she is, mate. After the Ebony Bridges fight, as you know, the shoulder collapsed literally upon itself and was catastrophic. So the surgeons went in and they couldn't repair it. There's nothing more they could do. So they literally hacked it out and threw a new one in there. That should be, for most, medical retirement from something like boxing. But you and I both know Shannon. She's head down, ass up for the last year. She's been beavering away in the gym and working hard. And in the last month or so, the surgeon who done her shoulder also trains at the gym, said it's sort of one of those stories that probably shouldn't happen. She's done what nobody expected you could do, and he's happy for her to have another crack. So I'm just working on that as we speak, as to what we do, how we do it, and when we do it.
Yeah, I saw some stuff posted. And I'm sorry, I forgot the name of the girl that she sparred, but she posted about sparring with Shannon. I remember when I saw that, I was like, wait, did that just happen? Did she spar? Like, what's going on? And now I thought that was like a miracle. Now she's actually going to go and fight, right? So that'll be interesting for sure. By the way, us Americans, you throw us off when you say kilos. And so that's 118 pounds and 122,
that's right?
Okay.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and look, honestly, I've had a knee replaced and a shoulder rebuilt, but when you get a replacement joint, it pretty much tells you that, that joint's got to be there for the rest of your days. So you tend to give up the things that might cause it some grief. But Shannon's just not that. It's not in her blood. She's been boxing 20 years, and she's our greatest female in Australia and in boxing. So it wasn't her time, and she didn't want to go out the way she did with Ebony Bridges. So credit to her. She's got that mentality where she's just non-stop and works so damn hard. And so, yeah, I'll have her back in. And as to what that'll be, we'll keep you guys posted on that one.
Sounds good. All right. Well, Nikita Tszyu. A couple of things about that, and I know Calix wants to get in as well, but I want to start with asking you this. From what I see, like Nikita Tszyu's must-watch TV. Like win, lose or draw, he's like you got to watch that guy fight. Like he's going to be in a hell of a fight, right? But I seen him like get hurt and dropped. As a fan, that's fun to watch. But you as a man, like, is it like a roller coaster when you watch him fight?
Yeah, look, the knockdown last week in the first was for all of us. It's an interesting one. It's a double-edged sword. Two things. One is that was a fairly big step up for Nikita, that opponent last week, and there was few people a little critical that 8 fights in, why are we putting him in with that guy? But well, Nikita, as a person and as a fighter, he must have the challenges there. He's no good if you're just lining him up to go through the motions. He needs something to get him out of bed. He loves those mountains to climb, and that's his personality. So getting knocked down for him was like, wow, okay, better not let that happen again. Nothing phases him. He just gets back up and takes care of it, and that's his personality on show, 100%.
Calix, you had a question?
Yeah, I was gonna say with Nikita. So D Style and I have talked about this ad nauseum. It seems like there's an overprotection of fighters now, especially here in America, where managers want to put their fighters in bubbles. And I think because of that, we've talked about how there hasn't another Arturo Gatti has not walked through that door. Somebody who can consistently put on good fights, and boxing fans don't care if those guys win or lose. And that's a good part about it, is there's a forgiveness factor if guys just entertain. So when you look at a Nikita Tszyu, how do you, even if the ceiling isn't as high as a TIm Tszyu, and it may end up being, we'll see, but I still feel there's a direction, a pathway forward. Do you see that?
Yeah, I know exactly where you're coming from. There's a longing for boxing fans for the entertainers, and you've seen that open up in the last year with some of these YouTube guys that are pure entertainers and not boxers, and they still get these massive audiences. In terms of real boxers, Arturo Gatti, who we knew very well through Kosta's period, you're right. They're few and far between, and one thing we don't do, and one thing I won't do as a manager, is hold any of my fighters back from a challenge. I just won't do it. They're either going to be fighters or they're hiders. And I just find right now the American market is flooded with people that they profess to love fighting, but they don't fight. And most of the fights are on social media where they're squabbling with each other rather than in the ring. So I think the Aussie way, if you look at the Aussie way, and even with Kostya, it was for me, if an opportunity is there and it's a tough fight and it means you've got to go to war, that's what boxing is. It's not the other side of let's go and negotiate for 2 years and then it doesn't happen. We just say yes, we want it. How quick can we do it? And you'll see that with all my fighters, they literally are fighting 3, 4, 5 times a year, and they're all great fights. And Nikita has that pathway that you mentioned about being a little different, and you're dead right. I don't think it would matter if Nikita turns up in Vegas and puts on a great show, win, lose or draw. He's going to be welcome back.
Yeah, it seems like, and this has sort of been my soapbox that we've been pushing here, is there's a huge vacuum for that. Just entertainment. We don't worry about the wins and losses here, and how high a fighter's ceiling is, but also activity. Activity.
Yes.
Now, is this just the Australian way, like you say, the Aussie way, or have you pinpointed as a manager that there is a huge vacuum out there of people like me, D Style, who just want to see fighters fight and want to see them fight often? Or is this just the way? This is just how you guys operate?
No, I think it's pretty much down to how we operate. There are some Aussie boxers that have chosen to take that road of sitting it out and step aside and get out of the way and sitting for 18 months. That doesn't make any sense to me. The boxers have a very, from a manager's point of view, whenever I take a boxer on, I say they have a very small window of opportunity that could end tomorrow. Every day has to count. Every day has to matter. So I go aggressively after the next fight and the next fight. And I'm always 2 fights ahead of the fighter. It's always work. I've got great promoters, No Limits Boxing, the George and Matty Rose and Trent Rose. They work with me, and it's all about for us. And let me ask you guys, when did it become unfashionable to be active in boxing? I don't get that. I mean, if you're a football player in Australia and you take a month off and sit on the sideline, you've got 2 or 3 months before you can get back on the field. These fighters just assume it's okay to sit out a year. Well, mate, COVID proved it over and over again. Those that sat out during COVID, and we didn't, we powered on right through COVID. We had 3 stadium sellouts for Tim during COVID. But granted, we were lucky we went to certain parts of Australia where you could do that, but we had to go away for 10, 12 weeks at a time, crossing borders and the like, but we did that because we wanted to fight. But these guys that are sitting out and waiting and putting in the years of non-activity, they're all getting beat up when they come back, and that's to their detriment.
True.
I don't see them ever being back where they were. So it's a whole new opportunity for my guys that are active to sweep through and surprise everyone. And then now we're winning the belt, so they got to come and get us now. So come on, we're waiting. We're going to come knocking on doors in America and say, listen, where does this guy live? Let's go knock on his door. Let's fight.
Now, the one thing I do like about Australian boxing is like you guys actually have like an Australian champion. Like there's tiers on the way up.
Yeah, we do.
Before you get to the world stage. Like we don't really have that. We don't have like an American champion over here or something like that. Historically,
that's right.
did, but we don't now.
Right.
But so I do like that aspect of it. Like you got to become the man in Australia before you move on to the world stage. For Nikita, is he like what's going to happen with that belt? Is he going to defend it? Is he going to move on to like a Commonwealth belt or something? What's the plan with that?
Yep. Well, pretty much. This is me personally. This is my management philosophy. I use a double figure, 10 fights to bring a fighter through the ranks in the pros to get him out of his rookie period. Now, Nikita, for me, last weekend broke through the rookie stuff. He's now ready and he's going into his 8th fight. So what happens from there is you go through your domestic challenges and anybody that'll get in the ring with you. Now, Nikita, with the last name and his ability, made it difficult. So we chased him, we got him, and we got it done. Then the Australian belt becomes the prestigious next level tier that you just talked about. Nikita wins that. We'll most likely vacate that and move straight on to the regionals and the Australasia, and then go into pretty much once you go to Australasian level, you're then starting to look for international opponents to bring to Australia for Nikita, or alternatively, use the introduction launch in March with Tim to put Nikita on that card, and if it goes well, then maybe we'll have him over in the US for some fights. But he's still very early, guys. He's got an awful lot to learn. We don't get carried away with Nikita. While he's doing well, the craft still comes first. And Igor, his coach, is a stickler for the craft, stickler for the learning, the basics. His defence has to be tightened up. His defence has to be better. His offence has come along nicely. His defence has improved, but he still gets hit too often. So that's something that will come in time as he matures into his own skin.
Okay. Now, another question, because like for us Americans over here, we don't get to watch him live, right? I have to wait till like the highlights or whatnot, which No Limit does post, thank God. But so we are able to see it. And I was watching that card as far as the highlights, and I was seeing all the knockouts. It looks like they put on a great show. Do you know if there's any possibility of No Limit anyway getting some type of deal with a streaming service in the United States that you're aware of?
Yeah, look, there is. Whether the streaming, that whole question is an absolute cracker, because right now our broadcasting platforms are all up in the air with the demise of Showtime.
Right.
I know Al Heyman's negotiating a deal to get a replacement for Showtime. You've got ESPN1, you've got DAZN and all these others, and you end up falling into one of those categories where, obviously for Tim, all of our competitors are with PBC, so we will be looking closely at what PBC comes up with. But the question in terms of the streaming is not one for us just yet. Ultimately,
Okay.
when we get to the United States and Tim becomes the fighter and the name that we expect in the United States, then the deals change and hopefully we can have the fights streamed from wherever we are. But you're going to see TIm Tszyu fighting in America now for quite some time. We don't expect to be bringing back to Australia. We've done that market here, possibly the UK. But whilst Tim's in America, then you guys will get access to those fights. And so you'll be able to see them live on the pay-per-view or whatever they're going out on in the US, which we can't tell you yet because I don't think it's been finalised. But
For sure.
Nikita's a different story. Nikita will continue to fight in Australia. He will have a few fights in the US. But the best we can hope for on Nikita is that his interest goes so fast that someone wants to pick them up in the US. And it could well be PBC what may well have a streaming organisation sitting alongside of their new deal. That'd be awesome.
So I'll say this because I used to work like in the TV industry. Look, Showtime, as great as they did cards and big events, the one weakness anyway in the modern era was here in the US anyway, like when TIm Tszyu would fight, we would only get TIm Tszyu's fight. We wouldn't get the undercard, right?
Yeah,
And to me, that was a very outdated model to me because all the other networks, the Zone, ESPN Plus, you get everything. You get the cards from the beginning to end. With today's technology, there's no reason to air all the fights. And
I agree.
If Al Heyman and PBC do happen to get a deal with like an Amazon Prime or somebody like that, then we may very well be able to get a lot of those fights, even the undercard fights. But But I guess like for me in the year 2024, right, coming, like we're getting the fights from Japan with Inoue, we're getting the fights from England, we're getting the fights from Saudi Arabia, and I know the rival promotional company of No Limit, they signed a deal with the Zone, so now their cards are going to be on the Zone. And for me, I guess I'm just wondering, and you may not have the answer at the moment, but if No Limit is going to land a deal with some type of streaming service, that we could get like those Nikita Tszyu cards on here.
Yeah, look, I think it's inevitable. I think No Limits have been somewhat of an Australian based company that hasn't, but the Australian market has been terrific for the Tszyu family based on the fact that Kosta was such a great ambassador for boxing at the time. But I think you're going to see, I think you'll definitely see No Limits with a streaming platform because the number one Tszyu right now, Tim, is now going to be fully fledged American fighting in the US. So the Americans will want to see him. We're only talking great fights. We're talking, guys that can produce that entertainment factor and keep Tim moving along. And we're coming after all the belts. We should have had a chance to take them all in one, but we'll go one at a time. We don't care. We're going to come knocking on the door, whoever owns the belt, and say, here's a date. We're here to fight. And hopefully you'll all get to see it on a streaming platform, mate. That would be the ideal outcome for us. And given the fact that if we do that, maybe there's that opportunity like the March fight where we're bringing, I think, 4, 5 or 6 of our Australian fighters, the best that we've got, to Vegas for that card. So it'll be like an Aussie invasion, which would be great to launch into the US.
Now, another quick before I let Kelly go again.
Yep.
I know you mentioned because like, what exactly is a relationship with you guys and PBC? Is it just like a rights fee or rights to his fights in the US? Like what exactly is the deal with PBC and TIm Tszyu?
It's an interesting one, isn't it? It's Matt Rose and Al Heyman have a great relationship, and it's a bit of an open book. There's nothing to hide there. We're not contractually tied to any of them. So we do have a luxury of being able to shop around and see what we can get. But we're very conscious of the fact that Al's been good with us. We've had a lot of Showtime PBC fights. And, of course, you can't wander from the fact that the guys we're after are all PBC contracted fighters. So it's a great relationship, and we're very very conscious of making sure that we do the right thing by them as well. But right now, if someone was to say, what are we doing? We don't have an answer, because until that broadcasting platform is locked in, there are no dates. So as soon as that gets done, and I understand it's fairly imminent, and the dates will roll out, and then we'll be jumping straight back in, boots and all. But I spoke with Tim this morning. He's in Thailand now, doing his 2 weeks as he does pre of every camp, ready to go for March the 2nd. So Nikita's on 2 weeks holidays, and then he'll be in camp for March the 2nd. So keep that one in your diary, boys. I think that's the one that's probably going to land. There's a couple of other options that are floating, but I think March 2 will be the one that lands.
Was there any friction with the PBC behind how the Jamal Charlo thing was handled? Waiting around for him, and then they end up taking the Canelo fight. Was there any friction there as that was going on?
Not from us. Yeah, not from us. Look, in a perfect world, there was a mandated that should have allowed Tim to fight for the undisputed. But this game we're in, mate, until that bell rings and those boys throw the first punch, anything's possible in boxing. So you can't dwell on the negatives. You've got to move forward with the positives. So the day that all went down, we just moved on. There was no beef with PBC. Possibly PBC may have had a little bit of a beef with Charlo for the actions he took. But end of the day, it was an opportunity to fight on the biggest card in the world, and how can you say to someone you shouldn't take that? I mean, if it came our way, we would take it. So you can't be too hard on anybody for that.
I wanted to ask you this, and you don't have to go into specifics about this, but I bring it up because of the activity thing. One of the things we hear from fighters all the time here and insiders is one of the reasons fighters are not active here in America is high minimums per fight. They promise fighters a minimum per fight guaranteed, and it really hinders what they can do for fighters. And it's good for fighters coming through the door, right? Because they're giving money. It's good short term, but long term, it hurts them. As I'm sure you would agree with this, it hurts them long term because they're not becoming stars. People aren't seeing them enough. Is there anything in TIm Tszyu's contract, say, that would hold him back from fighting continue to fight 3-4 times per year in the future?
No, not at all. I drafted Tim's contract with our promoters. We have a great relationship, but my background in security and working with the biggest action in the world means that contracts I've lived and bred by. So Tim's contract is very much in favour of the fighter. We can choose whether we want to go with a guaranteed purse or we can go with a promoter split. We can negotiate the deal on how that looks, what we want from it, the transparency. It's all in there, and it's worked beautifully. And to be honest, the Australian market works at its best on the limited resources and the limited numbers here on a guaranteed purse versus the American opportunity to have a $50 million pot. And so long as it's transparent and all parties can see where the money's coming from, how much it is, and what the fair and equitable split is, that shouldn't be a problem. I think where America gets bogged down, and some of the fighters have come out and stated this, is that when they go into those negotiations with their managers, they don't get the full picture. They have no clue. I think one of the examples was that a fighter went into a negotiation for a split and picked up 5 or 6 million for the fight. Unbeknownst to him, there was 50 million in the pot. So, I mean, those are issues that are contractual, and managers need to be. I think a real good manager in today's world has to be very au fait in the business world. Otherwise, you get steamrolled. And unfortunately, for a lot of fighters, their managers are traditionally boxing background without a lot of business, and so that takes second fiddle to some of the negotiations. And then ultimately, like you said, the fighter suffers because they don't get the reward that they potentially should.
Now, Glenn, you guys have made it very clear that as far as TIm Tszyu goes, the plan is to fight in America for a while, and you're not planning to going back to Australia for a while. You have made this very clear. However, there's a lot of, if you want to call them pseudo experts or whatever, like here on YouTube and social media, that keep making claims that for whatever reason that if you want to fight Tim Tszyu, you need to go to Australia. What can you tell us about that? Is twofold. Number one,
Yeah,
why the U.S.?
I mean, yeah.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Look, I just think there comes a time in a boxer's career. Tim's at 25 fights, and there is literally no further opportunities here without bringing fighters into Australia from the US. And remember, now that Tim's a world champ, all of the other belts, apart from the IBF, which is about to be sorted, are held by Jamel Charlo sitting over there. Tim holds one. So, it's the Mecca. America's the Mecca of boxing, and that's where, when you reach this level, that's where you need to be. You need to be over there. You need to be able to create a whole new level for Tim in a different country with a new audience and let it run its course. I mean, we can fill our venues, 20,000 in Australia, 10,000 in Australia for Nikita. We've done well with that, but to bring an outsider in from the United States in the Australian market, it doesn't necessarily guarantee you a sellout. The Australians may not know who that American is. And the Americans are saying that about Tim. He's got a great following in Australia, but not so much in America. Well, we're about to change that, and we just don't go of the view that you don't know who Tim Tszyu is. Well, we believe you do know. He does hold a world title belt, and when we come over there, if you choose to hide from us, then that's fine. But those that want to fight, we're ready. And we're not going to muck around. Here's the date. Here's the deal. Sign the contract. Let's go. We haven't got time to be sitting around.
Let me give you an example of stuff I've read on social media, right? Like, this is what I've read. Yep. This might even be a surprise to you, but it's what people are saying. One example is, if Crawford wants to fight Tim Tszyu, he needs to go to Australia because that's where the money's at. Like, what would your response to that be?
That's an interesting comment. I mean, that's where the money's at. Well, first of all, the only money that would generate, yes, we do a good sized stadium show, bums on seats, but the money's in the pay-per-view, fellas. The money's in the subscriptions and the people that want to buy pay-per-view. Now, that directs straight back to America. So you have to ask yourself, is Terence Crawford a big seller on pay-per-view in America? I don't know. You tell me.
He did pretty good with Spence.
Yeah, he did pretty good. Did anyone know what the numbers might have been?
Like 600,000, something like that.
See, now that's a great number. So if we take Terence Crawford out of the US market and pop him in Australia, and the Americans want to watch it, of course they've got to jump on pay-per-view. So that makes sense. I agree with that. Those mega fights could easily happen in Australia in an outdoor stadium, and we do very well putting bums on seats. We do very well on the pay-per-view side for Australia and New Zealand and the Asian quarter. And the Americans would do very well. So that would provide a nice big chunk of cash in the pot for both the fighters. I don't know, like Crawford, Spence, Charlo, they're all good fights for us, mate. But where they land, we don't care. We'll go wherever they land. We'll go and we want to fight. If it ends up in Australia, great. Hope to see you guys down here. If not, we'll be bumping India over there somewhere.
Yeah, for sure. Now, I guess, and the one thing we talked about offline was, you've already kind of conditioned Tim Tszyu fans to watch his fights on Sunday afternoon.
Yes.
So even if he fights prime time in the U.S., the pay-per-view is still going to be there in Australia. It's not going anywhere.
100%. Always has been. We had, I couldn't tell you how many fights in the United States with Kosta. And back then, the pay-per-view in Australia, this is 30 plus years ago, the pay-per-view was you went to a pub, like a hotel, and you got on the beers and you watched it on the big screen. You couldn't get the pay-per-view at home. And the pay-per-views back then were massive because every pub in Australia bought the fight because everybody loved Kosta and now they all love Tim. So the difference now is you can subscribe and pick up a subscription or go to Fox Sports Main Event or KO Sports, and you have two options, and their pay-per-view numbers are terrific. So we have both corners covered in that regard. It doesn't really matter to us where the fight lands now. I think for Tim, he would love the experience. I would love him to have the experience that we had with his father in the United States, and I hope we can build his name up to be huge. And you guys are helping in that process by showing interest in Tim and having me on here talking about him.
Now, is he making the 154-pound limit comfortably still? Is that
like a machine, no issues whatsoever.
The reason I ask that is this is the division that's heating up right now. You're going to have Errol and Bud both move up. You've already got Mel there, and I'm assuming Jermell may move back down. And then you've got names popping up, even like Virgil Ortiz, and then you've got a Connor Ben popping up, and you've got already the guys at 154 already. So you've got yourself a hot division there full of targets. Who is like the initial target, though? I know you guys have wanted Jermell. It doesn't look like, to me, as a boxing fan, it doesn't look like he wants that fight, but we'll see. Who would the other initial targets be?
Look, I agree with you. Jermell, we keep poking the bear, but he's nowhere to be found at the moment. So right now we're charging on. But the names that really resonate with us for Tim in the United States is we would love Errol Spence next. Love that fight. That's on the agenda. That's being talked about. Erickson Lubin's another fight that we thought would be a good name to launch Tim into America, based on if Errol's going to fight Terence and that takes him out of the equation. All those names you mentioned very quickly disappear when you look at their scheduling and what they want to do, and you come down to those that either don't have a schedule or don't have a fight locked in. Who can you actually get? Because we're not going to sit around and wait for these dudes. Terence and Errol could be another 2 years away, the rematch.
Does that become a frustrating process? Does that become a frustrating process?
No, not at all for me, because I refuse to be dragged into that bullshit of sitting around waiting. We just charge on to the next in line and the next in line, and we'll just keep on fighting. It doesn't matter who it is.
So just to clarify, if Spence wants it, he can get it.
Absolutely.
Okay, and okay, what about Crawford? Like,
if Crawford wants to jump up in March to 154, he can have it.
In Vegas.
Absolutely.
All right.
See, I think this is what people aren't understanding. I'm glad you're doing this, because when we talk as boxing fans, it's refreshing. We don't care where the fighters come from. We just want fighters who are willing to fight the fights. And that's it. And we don't want to hear about purse splits. We don't want to hear about where the fight belongs, all of this stuff. And I think there's a segment of boxing fans, particularly American boxing fans, who don't understand this, is the guy who walks through that door. And I think this is why we've been saying it. I've in particular been saying it. I'm not just saying this because you're on the show. I've been saying this. TIm Tszyu is going to become a star. It's as sure as the sun coming up tomorrow morning. And the reason why is what you're saying right here. And I'm glad you're here saying it, is because there's a huge vacuum for a fighter who just comes to the door and says, I'm going to fight often. I'm going to fight the fights out there. Oscar De La Hoya just recently put out a challenge. Somebody do what I did in 97 or whenever it was and fight 5 title fights in the same year. When I hear you talk, it's believable that a TIm Tszyu would do that.
It is believable, because that's the business plan from day one with Tim. He's 5 years in, 25 fights. That's 5 fights a year. So we don't change that. Nikita's on the same roadmap. Remember, Tim had 13 fights with me before we went to a promotional agreement. So I travelled him literally all over the country, over to New Zealand, and we were just fighting every couple of months. And TIm Tszyu, I can tell you right now, he's in Thailand in a training camp, and he'll ring me every second day and say, what's the update? When am I fighting? Who am I fighting? And I say, mate, just chill. You just keep doing what you're doing over there, and I'll keep you posted. I said, Matty and the boys are in America now. I mean, we don't stop. We just constantly going at it to find the next fight. And, you have things like Jermell Charlo pulled out on us on Christmas Eve. So what do? We went straight to bat that day, and we organised Tony Harrison to come to Australia. Every one of these guys that we took, the same social media people all said, That's too early for TIm Tszyu. He's not going to be able to cope. And he's wiped the floor with Mendoza, he wiped the floor with Ocampo, and he's wiped the floor with Tony Harrison. Mate, we love wiping the floor, so get ready to bring the towels. We're going to wipe the floor in America. We're coming. We're coming for all of them. It doesn't matter. We'll go. Listen, this is not me being boastful. This is just who we are. We have discussed going to 160 to 168 for the big fights. We'll take Jamal Charlo. We'll take Canelo Alvarez at 168. We don't believe that you should be hiding away from those opportunities. This is fighting. Fighters fight. Whether you win those fights is entirely up to the preparation and the work. But the business of boxing and keeping the fighter engaged and active and keeping the audience constantly wanting more, that's what I do, and that's what we're about.
I wanted to ask you this real quick, too. I don't know how much longer we have you, so forgive me if I'm asking too many questions.
I'm having fun with you guys. I love it.
You sent D-Style an email. This was, I don't remember when this was, a month or two ago. And you said, we need to get back to weight class business. And that stuck out to me. This was after, I think, the Canelo versus Jamel fight. And it seems to me too many novelty fights are being discussed. Naoya Inoue versus Tank Davis versus Keith Thurman. You know, they're talking about Bud Crawford versus Canelo Alvarez.
Yeah,
I agree with you. Weight class business. Do you see the same thing we're seeing? Like, there's too much off the wall stuff being discussed. We just want fighters fighting and trying to be the best in their weight class.
Yeah, look, I don't think it's a generic rule that you can stick to. If you've got a fighter, now I'm going to use TIm as an example. TIm's a big 154. He's a 160 tomorrow if he wants to be, and he's a 168 comfortably. That's no joke. TIm's built like a brick shithouse. He's built like a tank, and his ability to move up and down is all based on his frame, his physique, and his fitness. That's the part that undoes me. I can't see, for the love of God, a small 147 going to 168 and having a chance in hell. They're going to get hurt, and their career's going to be finished. So there needs to be a line in the sand on fighter welfare with that, and there has to be some sense brought back to boxing. I mean, the reason they're doing it, there's a whole new world out there now that the American fighters in particular call mega fights, and the mega fight for them is a $10 million purse plus. Now, if you get a $10 million purse and you win, lose or draw, you don't have to fight for a couple of years, and that's the problem that it all stems from. So these guys are prepared to jump 2-3 divisions, take a hiding if it comes. I'm not saying they're deliberately doing it, but if it comes, they still get paid. And unfortunately, the downside of that is it filters down through the ranks, and then everyone starts trying to create a mega fight because it's all about the dollars and the likes. Now, you take Jamel Charlo versus Canelo. Jamel's a big 154, probably the biggest. Him and TIm, probably the biggest guys. And he went up, and he said initially he was going to fight at 168, but he didn't. He ended up fighting closer to 162 or 163. But I don't know what happened that day. I've seen you fellas have an opinion on it. To me, it looked like Jamel turned up for the paycheck.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't the Jamel that we expected to fight. I got no idea what's in his head. If he's got some problems up there, then I hope he gets better. I hope he sorts it out, because he's a quality fighter. But now he's disappeared. He's got the 10 mil. He's disappeared. No one knows where he is. He didn't go to his brother's fight on the weekend. He's not talking to his brother. There's all sorts of stuff going on. So we can't wait. But absolutely on the weight stuff, mate, I think if you've got a fighter that's capable, and I always think of the fighter's health and their welfare. If I'd have no problem putting TIm up to 160. I would talk to Igor about him going to 168, but that would take a little bit of time, because you have to work towards that. You just can't make that jump, otherwise you're going to get murdered.
Okay. Now, another one of your fighters, real quick, Liam Wilson. He sort of came out of left field for me. I'm gonna be honest. I'm a Navarrete fan. I'm high on him, and he almost had him out of there. The mouthpiece thing happened. He almost had him out of there. When do we see him again? What's the plan going forward with him?
I've got him back in on December 15 in Sydney against a very, very good Australian fighter named Jackson England. It'll be a good scrap. But my plan would be, early next year, is to get Liam back on the international stage with a view. He's maintained some very good rankings, and we would love to have another crack at Navarrete. Whether we get it or not, we don't know. But we're certainly working our way back towards Liam for another world title shot in 2024. And we were gutted for him. I know you're a Navarrete fan, and boxing's very tribal, and I respect that. But any time a fighter gets 30 seconds to recover is always difficult for the opposing team that delivered the blow.
Yeah, that shouldn't happen.
That shouldn't have happened. And unfortunately, the 30 seconds took us to the round, which gave him another minute. And that's the sad part sometimes, that those things don't go your way and the opportunity of your lifetime's taken from you. But Liam's a good kid. He's only young. He's a very accomplished young fighter. He'll come back. And I intend keeping him super busy, and expect to see Liam. We'd love to get Navarrete again. We've certainly thrown it out there. They offered us the rematch post-fight based on controversy, but as you know, that dies off once the wind blows away. Let's see what happens.
Now, Glenn, it seems like before the Harrison fight, fighters were coming out saying, hey, we don't think. Excuse me, hold on, let me take care of this. My bad. All right, fighters came out like saying Harrison's going to school him, easy work. I don't call it an upset, yada yada yada. Before the Mendoza fight, he's never fought a puncher like that. Just watch when Mendoza touches him, see what happens. I'm still waiting for something to happen, I guess. But here's the thing. Just recently, just to keep on with the theme, somebody from Crawford's team came out and said they believe Spence would stop TIm Tszyu. When you keep hearing like this, like kind of like they kind of doubt Tim, like, does that motivate you guys, or does it kind of, but does it annoy you at the same time, given what Tim's already proved? Like, how do you feel about it?
Certainly not me. I've got skin like a lizard, and that was Bomac that came out and said that. And I think Bomac's got his own problems at the moment with carting guns around the world. Did you guys? No doubt you've seen that story over there about the UK that he took into England. That was interesting. But look, it doesn't bother. It certainly doesn't faze me in the slightest. The doubt factor is me looking at the rest of the world, looking back at TIm Tszyu, saying, you know what? I wonder if we get to 35-0, whether they'll still be doubting him. It doesn't seem to matter who we fight, what we do, and who we destroy. It's not enough to appease them. And that tells me that one of two things. Those making the comments are very insecure about our bloke. And so their defence against TIm Tszyu is to try and bring him down to their level rather than them elevate up to ours. So Tim will continue to go and take care of these guys in the fashion that he does. And sooner or later, I noticed a little bit of them. Some of them are saying, my bad, I'll cop that one. I thought Mendoza was going to belt Tim. But you'll see more and more of the guys will turn and become fans of Tim, because he does what he says. He doesn't say a lot, but he takes care of it in the ring.
Now, I have one more question for you. This is a Kosta Tszyu question.
Yep.
Now you actually told me before the show about it, so I was very surprised that Kosta Tszyu fought in El Paso and I didn't know about it, which is kind of embarrassing. But nonetheless, he fought Rafael Ruelas in the County Coliseum here in El Paso, Texas, in my hometown. What do you remember about that fight, and what do you remember about El Paso?
Is that Coliseum still there?
Yes.
It is, yeah. It's an old building, eh?
It's really old, yes.
Yeah. No, I remember it well. It was a summer fight. It was so freaking hot. And we'd done our press conference outside in the sun, outside the hotel, and it was just murder. And I mentioned to you, our team kit arrived in America from Australia, and when we opened it up, it was like fluorescent yellow, the brightest yellow you could see, like the sun. And El Paso was like 40-degree heat, and here we are walking around like 5 or 6 Tweety birds wandering the streets of El Paso. It wasn't a good look. Honestly, we looked like some sort of a gay boy band. But it was fun, and I think Ruelas, I'd have to go back and look. We had a run of the Mexican fighters who were nearly all represented at the time by Dan Goosen, and and Kostya did a number on Raphael, and Raphael and Gabe Ruelas at the time were red hot in America. They were highly talked about. I think you mentioned 52-3 or something, and Kostya destroyed him. And I thought I thought Raphael never fought again after that. That Kostya had retired him, but you corrected me and said he did fight again 12 months later against some 11-4 or something guys, and that was the end of. We never really heard of the Ruelas boys after that. So it sort of shows you the similar mentality that we go into America with. We got someone very special in TIm and Nikita Tszyu, and Kosta was also someone very special. And you can't, no matter what people say and what people do, you can't hide naturally born ability, skill, timing, distance, and motivation and focus. Those are things you can't hide. And everybody that's come in front of TIm have all said the same thing. There's levels to this. TIm's not up to it, and TIm's taking care of them. So 25-0, we'll continue on. I don't see anyone taking TIm's over for a while. I mean, there's nobody that we're frightened of. We don't have that fear factor that so many do. We're a team of professionals, and we've got great fighters, and that's what we do. My job's to get the fights. My job's to make the fights, and my job is to make sure my fighters are well looked after. And the coach's job is to prepare them like gladiators, so every time they go in, they perform better than they did last time. And that's what we do. It's a really simple plan, and I think the Americans are going to love it because I'll give you another simple example, boys. There's another heavyweight that's just coming on with me now, and he fought on the undercard. I don't know if you've seen it. He had a second-round knockout, which is probably knockout of the year, and this kid can fight. His name's Brandon Gratch, and they call him the Bull. Now, he fought last Wednesday. I'm putting him back in the ring in 2 weeks' time.
Okay, wow.
So that doesn't happen too often in America. It doesn't happen too often in Australia. But these are my mentality. My business plan is you must be busy. When you're red hot, you need to go back in front of that audience. You need to keep that audience engaged. You need to sell tickets. You need to put bums on seats. That's the key to success, whether you go after the belts or you go after pay-per-view. This is the business of boxing. And I teach my guys the business of boxing. You need to understand. You all got your own companies. We've done all of that. You need to understand my mentality. You've got to fight. You're not going to have a second round knockout where you haven't even got a scratch or an injury or a mark. You've done an 8-week camp. I'm putting you back in 2 weeks, whether you like it or not. Let's go. And they love it. These guys love it. He's excited. He's back in the gym today getting ready for 2 weeks. That's how boxing should be, mate. With a view that sooner or later you can't do that. I get that. I understand that. And there will come a time where you've got to take time off for injuries. You've got to take time off to get the next big fight. But whilst we're on a roll and whilst we're working so far in advance and we've got options out everywhere and we're talking to everyone, I think you're going to see a very busy. My company's called Fight Life Management, so it's exactly that, fight and life put together.
Sounds great, Glenn. Hey, we definitely appreciate your time, Glenn. We want to let you get back to your vacation there with your family, and you have a go one, Glenn.
Thanks, Glenn.
Yeah, I hope to see you guys in March in Vegas, and we'll get to sit down and you can interview the boys face to face and have a good time, and we'll bring you over there as our guests.
For sure. We're
Thank
down.
you.
It'll happen.
Guys.
Have a good one, Glenn.
All the best, fellas. See ya.
Well, there you go. Hey, Calix, before we wrap this one up, first of all, really quick, MAW, I appreciate the support, brother. Hello, fans, Eastal, Calix, and Glenn in chat. Appreciate 5 for the live. Great interview. Subscribe, share, smash, and smash the like button, please, folks, he says. Okay. First of all, I just need to say this. It's like he's preaching, bro. Like I'm like in church ready to faint. I swear to God. Like I'm just like, that's all we want. We just want these guys to fight. Like we just want activity. We want them to fight. That's it, right? And I like hearing that. I don't like roadblocks, bro. Like yeah, we'll fight Crawford, sure, yeah, in Vegas, yeah, no problem. We'll fight him in Australia too. It doesn't matter wherever he wants to fight. It is what it is, bro.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I think No Limit has done a really good job prepping the Australian fan base, right, and getting used to watching TIm Tszyu. Like, this is long-term thinking. This is not like they've been, we talk about long-term thinking all the time. They planned this a long time ago. Like, we're going to go to America one day. So for now, let's put Tim on Sunday afternoon here in Australia. We're going to condition his fans to know TIm Tszyu fights on Sunday afternoon, right? So guess what? When he fights Saturday night in the U.S., they got that pay-per-view money, bro. That pay-per-view money over there is not going anywhere, right? And that was done with long-term thinking. You know what I mean? But any thoughts on the interview, brother?
That's what I took from it is we've said for a while there's an activity, there's a vacuum for a talented fighter who's also entertaining, who isn't restricted. And that's why I specifically asked him that. Is there anything in his contract that restricts him, that could restrict him in the future as far as activity? And he said no. And it's good to hear that he has sort of a flexible contract that will keep him busy. It's also good to hear that they're not necessarily tied to BBC. They're loyal to them. It makes sense for them to be with the PBC, being that they have sort of a monopoly on fighters in and around that weight class. But they're also free to negotiate with other brands. And we asked about the platform too. Not sure what's going to happen with the platform. I think that's still up in the air. We're hearing the same rumors. I'm hearing the same thing from the insiders as well. Amazon Prime, I've heard Peacock, stuff like that. But I think it's still up in the air and everybody's still waiting to hear. So some things were cleared up, but I like what I'm hearing as far as that whole stable, because Liam Wilson back December 15th and I want him back beginning of the year. I have a heavyweight fighter. I told him no 8-week camp. You're back in the ring in 2 weeks. This is the stuff you want to hear, because watch out for this little pipeline here, particularly when it looks like TIm Tszyu. It looks more and more each fight that this guy is the talent that they've been promising. And even if that ceiling ends up being lower, right? Even if he doesn't realize that potential, there will be forgiveness there if you simply fight the fights. We talk about this all the time with Canelo, right? It's trust the track record. You're going to get the fights you want. Get your panties out of a wad. You're going to get the Benavidez fight. The track record's there. And he's going to develop that same type of fan base over time. Why? Because Glenn alluded to it at the end. We do what we say we're going to do. We're coming to America. We're going to storm the gates. We're knocking on everybody's door. What's their address? He said it. What's their address? What's the fighter's address? We're going to knock on their door. This is the type of stuff, and people seem confused still. Why do we find fighters like this endearing? There's no other attraction to Canelo for me other than he fights the fights. It's the same thing with TIm Tszyu. He fights the fights. I'm there.
But the fights, Navarrete fights the fights. Like it comes down to fighters that are active. We like active fighters, and it just is what it is. And TIm Tszyu young. It's a time to be active. Even De La Hoya said, "Hey, when you're young, it's a time to go.
Yeah,
you're only gonna get older. Like, you know what I mean? Like, go, bro." And there's one thing De La Hoya said in the last few weeks is that I agree with. Yeah. You know what I mean? And I gotta say, man, I just like that attitude. I don't know what else to say. It's like, yeah, we'll fight them. Sure, why not? Yeah, if they want to do it.
And it shouldn't be that exciting because it's common sense, but you're so starved of it. You don't see it anywhere anymore, to where when somebody just says something that's common sense, it's common sense.
Man,
you put on a good performance. Guess what? We can't rest up now. We got to strike while the iron's hot. We got to fight. And
by the way, guys, we definitely appreciate you guys being here. Definitely. We just can't, Glenn's giving us our time, so we can't be back and forth with chat and Glenn at the same time. But, and I don't know if you guys know, like sometimes someone's on their phone, especially it's probably hot in Australia. I could tell the StreamYard was trying to heat up his phone. Like, so it is what it is, but he still gave us his time. He still wanted to stay, you know what I mean? Like, look, so we're appreciative. He's on vacation, giving us his time. So like, shout out to him. And look, and he reached out. He said, "Look, hey, I'm ready to come back whenever you guys want to have me on." I said, "Yeah, Wednesday." He didn't tell me he was on vacation, but it is what it is, right? So like he's always working. He's always working for his fighters, obviously. Okay, and we appreciate. As far as the Amazon, he touched on it briefly, but he made it very clear that he doesn't have any specifics on it. Like, you know what I mean? Like, Glen's not there without him and like talking about the broadcasting deal. But what we do know is that there's communication and they're waiting on confirmation. Confirmation on what, I don't know, right? But that's all we really got, guys. Okay, you can always go back, by the way, listen to the whole interview. And I think that's that. Look, we'll do a show tomorrow on Calix's channel. We'll keep you posted. We'll do another HCP show to talk about all the fights and all that good stuff. And if there's any lingering thoughts about the interview and all that, but any final thoughts, Calix?
No, man, great interview. He said everything I wanted to hear, and I'm looking forward to this possible March 2nd card. And I'm very interested in who the opponent is going to be, and I'm thinking it'll likely be an Erickson Lubin type from what he's saying, right? Everybody else is tied up. We're just going to keep staying active and knocking on doors till somebody answers.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens. Anyways, guys, it's D-Style Boxing, and for Calix, we're out. Peace.
God bless.